Wanted to do actually the third video on this project. This is the Allis Chalmers, or it can be any tractor, kid's twin bed frame. Before I start painting it, and hopefully this video will help if you do this. It's actually the third video. I did a separate video on the front and the back tires. I've had this all together and now I've kind of knocked it apart, so I'm ready to paint it and then go from there. The one thing I would do differently if I did this over again is I would probably use lighter components. The frame out of it is built out of 2x10s, which you may think is excessive, but my 3-year-old has a destructive force that can only be compared with a Category 4 hurricane. So I figured I had to do it to give the upper parts the support it needed. Anyways, the actual assembly of the box itself is pretty easy. It's a labor-intensive process, but all you really need to do this entire project is skill saw, a jigsaw, and a belt sander, and an electric screwdriver, an electric drill. Not much more than that. So, anyways, the base is to make a twin bed frame has to be a 79 or 78 inside length by 39 width. So I took 2x10s, stacked them on top of each other, used some gang nailers and some screws and some glue, and put it together. Used some angled corner braces to screw it together. You can see the front is knocked apart for painting, and that was pretty easy. Next thing I did after I made the box is I went ahead and I did the front. The front was the same thing, 2x10s stacked on top of each other with an overhang to support the side panels. And it hangs over a 1/2 inch, actually 2 inches in total, past the outside of the frame. Again, your inside diameter needs to be 39 inches. The back was the easiest part. The back is built just like an ordinary wall, basically as a frame in your house, out of 2x4 studs. So here's the back, made out of 2x4s. Overall height is 41 inches. Again, the inside width is 39 inches. The edges look like that with one upright to support the beam, and then 2x4s flat, if you will, in order to create a railing around the back. And that is the back of it. Next thing I did is I made the grill, the front. The grill or the front is a 2 foot high by 46 wide to cover a 2x4 on each side. You end up with a little bit wider grill of 2x4s, screwed, and eventually they'll be glued together. And then a channel cut in the middle of it for the grill. The grill is made out of 1/4 inch birch board, and that's over here. And what you use or what your grill looks like will depend on what kind of tractor you're making or to replicate. This being an Allis Chalmers, it should look something like that. The decal will go there. Now, if you can find a piece of like expanded metal or something like that, that'll save you a lot of work. Obviously, had to cut all those holes in a fairly labor-intensive process, but that is the nature of this entire thing. But if you can find a piece of expanded metal at a hardware store or something that replicates your grill or actual grill, if you can find one cheap enough, probably would use that. But that's the front. Next thing to make is the side panels, and the side panels are 40 inches long by 2 feet high. This side panel has a 2x8 topper. The other one has a 2x6 topper. This is a 2x8 topper to support the air cleaner and the muffler. Anyways, it's a piece of 1/4 inch plywood that's bolted, and the bolts replicate what Allis Chalmers looks like. They have bolts exposed like that, so hopefully it'll look kind of cool when it's done. The inside is not that fancy. The inside is a 2x4 frame that's glued and double pinned, or actually in my case biscuit jointed together with the 1/4 inch plywood cut to match it and glued to the outside. On this side, what I did is I left this post a little bit longer and used a bolt to attach it to the 2x10, so that's not going to go anywhere. There's also an angle brace that I put up here to give the front some more strength actually. That isn't going to go anywhere. This side, the side towards me, is removed. It's an exact replica, and that's on hinges with a gate pin that I've removed here. And what that does is it allows you to open it to get in there. It was a request from the wife that, you know, you need to be able to actually get in there to change the sheets, not just a 3-year-old be able to get in there, which is honestly something I wasn't thinking about at the time, so it's probably good. Anyways, this side will open up on hinges the entire way, and that was the side. The next thing was a support in the center to connect the two sides. And you don't see it, you'll see that more in the final video. Basically what it is 2 2x4s glued together and a hole in the middle for a steering wheel, and we'll have more on that later, but that was the next step. You can see there's 4 dowel pins there that hold that together, another dowel pin or dowel rod that goes down from the top, and more holes here meant to hold that up. And that'll all be glued together later, and I'll show you more on that. Next thing to make was the fenders, and the fenders are made with first your uprights, 4 2x4s. They're 28 inches long up to the top, and go down 6 inches below the end of the bed. On top of that is a 2x12 that sits on top of that. That is a total of 3 feet long. Underneath there to support it, you have a 2x4 that runs on the inside, a 2x8 that's cut on the outside, cut down quite a bit, and cut with a curve to accommodate the tire. And then one thing I didn't show earlier, hopefully you've watched this video several times if you're going to do that, but the top, this is the main support for the fender. The top part of my back wall extends underneath there to support the fender. There's a 2x4 again on the inside here. And then there's a cut down 2x6 here to support headlights later on. The other side is an exact mirror image of that. So now moving on to accessories. Well, now you make your front and your back tires, which again is the worst of it. So go ahead and do that and watch the other videos if you really want to. Or take a piece of plywood and save yourself a lot of time and cut it and paint it. Anyways, muffler. The muffler is 10 inches high, 2 2x6s glued together, rounded off to look like a muffler. Another 9-inch, 2-inch birch dowel. Actually, it's like a closet rod that's with a 3/8 dowel pin or 3/8 dowel rod that's connected to the bottom there. Air cleaner is a 12-inch long piece of 3-inch PVC pipe roughed up to take some paint. 2 6.5-inch circles of 5/8 plywood, and then actually a piece of 6-inch B-vent stovepipe, believe it or not, that I cut to stick inside of there to act as the air cleaner. Final thing, we had to make some steps. These are just a piece of 2x4s screwed on there to make a support for the step. Steps are over here. Pretty simple. Just take 2 2x4s, cut an angle on them, make 2 level steps between those. Pretty straightforward if you've come this far. Finally, if you've ever seen an Allis Chalmers 190, you know the back of it has a slanted gas tank. It's kind of weird. You sit on the fuel tank, which is pretty weird for 1980 when most farmers smoked, and they made this tractor in a gas, and you're smoking sitting on top of a gas tank. A whole nother story behind these and how they ever got built in the first place. But in any event, they had this slant back to them. And this is kind of be a bookshelf here, just made out of 2x4s and some 1/2-inch plywood here. Very simple, basically 1/2-inch plywood shelving, and this is just an accessory on the end of it. There'll be this shelf here of 1/2-inch plywood. I'll show you more of that later once it's all put together on how that looks. These, if you were wondering earlier, these 2x4s that are screwed on here are actually supports for the shelf, but they'll support these 2x4s as well. Anyways, that's the whole project. We'll paint it up. We'll bring the pieces in and show you some components of it that you really can't see with it all disassembled like this. And hopefully it'll look pretty cool.